A dull, throbbing ache pulses at the base of Zara's skull as she wakes. The den is dim, firelight flickering against the stone walls. The familiar scent of fur and herbs fills the air. 3 figures crowd around her. Taryn, calm and steady as always, pressing a poultice to her wound. Rick, his brow knotted in frustration. And Loon, the youngest, his golden eyes wide with worry. "You shouldn't have fought her again," Taryn murmurs. "Eve nearly tore your scalp open," Rick growls. "What were you thinking, Zara?" "We thought you'd stopped breathing," Loon adds quietly, voice trembling. Their concern pierces her deeper than the pain. She stares at them, breath shallow, mind swirling. "Why do I know those names?" And then, like lightning tearing through her skull, memories surge. Not from this world but from Earth. Flashes of a book, The Gazelle and Her Mates. A heroine named Sia, a gentle but cunning gazelle beastman who rose from nothing, gathering powerful males around her. A tiger, a wolf, a bear, and finally a 4-marked lion named Lionel. And in that book there was a leopardess named Zara. Proud, spoiled, and swiftly killed off after provoking the wrong person. A side character. Cannon fodder. Forgotten before the story even began. The shock makes her vision swim. She feels dizzy, nauseous, hollow. When she blinks again, her mates are still there, watching her with unearned tenderness. Taryn's hands are gentle. Loon's tail twitches nervously. Rick's anger hides fear. They still care for her. Even after all the cold words, the arrogance, the humiliation she's poured on them. Tears slip down her cheeks before she realizes. "Zara?" Taryn asks softly. "I'm sorry," she whispers. The silence that follows is heavy, unnatural. None of them have ever heard her say those words. She turns her gaze down, shame twisting her chest. "I've been cruel to you all. I didn't see how much you cared. I want to make it right." Rick snorts, but there's confusion in his eyes. "Did she hit her head harder than we thought?" Loon tries to smile. "You should rest. Maybe the herbs are making you strange." But Taryn doesn't move. He studies her quietly, something unreadable flickering across his face. "If you mean it," he says at last, "prove it when you're healed." Zara nods faintly. "I will." The next morning, Zara insists on walking, though her legs tremble. Her mates follow, wary but protective as she makes her way to her parents' den. The leopard chief, Rahar, and his mate, Mira, sit in quiet conversation when Zara enters. Myra's tail lashes the ground when she sees her daughter. "You look worse than Eve and she's the one you attacked," her mother snaps. "We've already sent word for her punishment," her father adds, his tone cold. "Your behavior shames the clan, Zara." Zara bows her head, something she's never done before. The gesture silences them both. "Father, Mother, it was my fault." Rahar's ears twitch. "What?" "I tried to take Eve's prey. She warned me to back off, but I mocked her. I thought my birth gave me the right to everything. I was wrong." Myra's expression hardens, disbelieving. "Zara, are you fevered?" "No. Please. Don't punish her. My mates. They shouldn't suffer for my foolishness." Rahar leans forward, eyes narrowing. "Since when do you protect others? What game are you playing?" Zara's voice trembles, but she holds her father's gaze. "I've caused enough harm already. I only want to make things right." The room falls silent again. Myra's anger ebbs into suspicion. Rahar finally exhales, tail flicking once in dismissal. "If this is truly remorse, prove it through action." "Words are wind, Zara." "I will," she whispers. When she leaves, her heart pounds. Every step feels heavier with the weight of her past, and the knowledge of the story she remembers. In the book, this fight was the beginning of her end. It was meant to draw Lionel's attention, the lion with 4 marks, who would soon arrive at the border between their clans. He'd step in when Sia's group crossed paths with the leopards, and Zara's arrogance would seal her death. But this time she's determined to change everything. Sia, the gazelle heroine, isn't a rival. She's a collector of mates, gathering strength through connection, adored by all. Zara's story never even mattered in that world. Maybe now it will. That evening, as the camp settles into quiet, Zara sits beside the dying fire. Her 3 mates rest nearby, still wary of her strange gentleness. The wind carries the scent of the wild, smoke, fur, and distant rain. She stares into the embers, lost in thought. "I don't know why I'm here again," she thinks. But I won't waste it. Her past life as a reader, her past self as a cruel beast. Both are ghosts now. All that's left is the fragile chance to live differently. I'll make it right, she murmurs into the night. Even if no one believes me yet. And for the first time since she woke, her heart feels strangely light, uncertain but alive. The morning mist clung to the camp like breath. Zara knelt by the river, scrubbing hides until her fingers burned. Her tail swayed behind her, damp from the spray. Every so often she caught the eyes of others passing, brief glances quickly averted. He was still the outcast. No words of greeting. No trust. When she returned, carrying the washed skins over her shoulder, a lioness by the fire pit wrinkled her nose. Careful where you dry those, Leopard, she said. We don't need bad luck rubbing off on the food. Zara didn't rise to it. She hung the hides beside the smoke, hands steady. A familiar voice called from behind her. Zara. Her father's tone was rough, aged by disappointment. The leopard patriarch stood near the edge of camp, flanked by her mother, smaller, sharp-eyed, her arms crossed tightly. Zara stepped closer and bowed her head. Father. Mother. Her father's gaze lingered on her face. The elders talk of punishment for what happened with Eve's prey, he said. They say your mates should bear the shame. Zara's chest tightened. She had expected this. It was my fault, she said quickly. They shouldn't suffer for what I did. Her mother's tail lashed once. You shame us by begging, child. Zara met her eyes. Then let the shame rest on me alone. For a long moment no one spoke. The crackle of the fire filled the silence between them. Her father's shoulders sagged slightly. If only you had learned this humility sooner. I'm learning it now, Zara said quietly. The day stretched long and tense. Zara spent it repairing baskets beside the cooking fires, weaving reeds while the camp murmured around her. Every sound, the ring of tools, the crack of branches, felt sharper now, clearer, as though her senses were still trying to adjust to this second life. By dusk the hunting party returned. Dust and blood marked their faces, and the air turned thick with the scent of fresh kill. But the usual cheer was missing. Whispers rippled through the camp. Eve's hurt. Badly, a boar gored her side. Her males are carrying her in. Zara froze, the half-woven basket slipping from her hands. A few females nearby turned their heads to gauge her reaction. Eve, the gazelle beastman she'd fought with, the one whose prey she'd stolen, now lay pale and trembling as her mates lowered her onto a mat near the healer's hut. The healer was out on another errand and panic stirred. One of Eve's mates called for help, voice cracking. Please. She's bleeding too fast. No one moved. The sight of blood unnerved most of the females. Others hesitated, wary of being blamed if things went wrong. Zara stepped forward before she realized she had. Move aside, she said, kneeling beside the injured woman. Eve's breath came in short gasps. Her furred ears twitched weakly, a gazelle's, soft and trembling. Zara tore a strip from her own tunic and pressed it to the wound, her hand steady despite the tremor in her heart. Boar tusk went deep, she murmured. She'll bleed out if it's not stopped. Why are you helping her? One of the females hissed from behind. After what happened? Because no one else is, Zara said flatly. She tightened the makeshift bandage and looked to Eve's oldest mate. Bring clean water and ash. Hurry. The male obeyed without a word. When he returned, Zara cleaned the wound and packed it with ash to stem the bleeding. A crude trick, one she remembered from survival videos she'd once watched in her old life. By the time the healer arrived, Eve's bleeding had slowed. Her breathing steadied, shallow but even. The healer looked at Zara, surprise flickering in her eyes. You saved her. Zara shook her head. I just kept her from dying until you came. As the others gathered, she stepped back quietly. Her hands were stained red and her chest ached with the weight of too many eyes. From across the firelight she saw her father watching, unreadable but not angry this time. And for the first time since awakening, Zara felt a flicker of something unfamiliar stirring in the clan's gaze. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the first thin thread of respect. By nightfall the camp had grown still. Smoke from the fires spiraled into the dark, carrying the scent of cooked meat and damp earth. Zara sat a little apart, leaning against one of the clay storage huts. Her hands still smelled faintly of blood even after scrubbing them raw in the stream. Footsteps approached, 3 pairs familiar in rhythm. Her mates. The first to speak was Taryn, calm and watchful as ever. He crouched beside her. "The healer told everyone what you did," he said quietly. Zara didn't look up. "She'll live." "She will," Taryn replied. "Because of you." The second, Rick, broad-shouldered and usually brash, flopped down beside her. His usual grin was gone, replaced with a serious line across his face. "Half the camp doesn't know what to make of it," he admitted. "You saving Eve. Some think you're scheming again." "I'm not," Zara said softly. "I just didn't want her to die." Rick's ears flicked, skeptical but attentive. "Strange words coming from you," he muttered. The last, Loon, the youngest and most tender-hearted of the 3, approached with a small fur-lined cloak in his hands. He knelt and draped it over her shoulders, his fingers brushing her arm lightly. His eyes searched hers, unsure whether she'd accept the gesture. Zara finally looked up, meeting his amber gaze. "Thank you," she whispered. A long silence followed, broken only by the distant crackle of the fire. "I know what I've been," she said after a pause. "I can't change what everyone remembers. But I can change what they see now." Taryn's tail flicked once, soft in the firelight. "Whatever happened, don't stop. The clan might not trust you yet, but we—" He hesitated, then added quietly, "We want to." Zara looked at each of them, their faces marked by worry and exhaustion, yet gentle tonight in the flickering glow. She drew the cloak tighter around herself and breathed in deeply. "I'll give you reason to," she promised. A soft wind whispered through the camp, rustling the sleeping huts. Somewhere in the distance a lion's roar echoed, the same one she had once chased in her younger, reckless days. But Zara's gaze stayed on the firelight in front of her. For the first time she wasn't reaching for what wasn't hers. She was learning to hold what already was. The sun rose pale and thin over the camp, painting the huts in streaks of gold. Zara moved quickly, hands full of water jugs, stepping carefully across the rough ground. Loon padded behind her, helping steady the heavier containers. "Careful, Zara," he said, whispering as they reached the cooking area. "You don't want to spill it all." "I won't," she replied, adjusting the weight against her shoulder. The clan was stirring, hunters sharpening blades, females arranging hides for drying. Whispers followed her movements, low and cautious. Some shook their heads, others glanced at her with surprise. The word had spread, she had saved Eve last night. Taryn appeared first, carrying bundles of firewood. He met her at the river edge and gave a small nod. "We'll need more water today. The roots will dry faster if we soak them first." Zara bent over, hands submerged, lifting and pouring with precise rhythm. Loon mimicked her movements, trying to match her speed. They worked in silence, but the fire in the camp reflected in Zara's eyes, and some of the onlookers softened slightly at the sight. Rick arrived, balancing 2 large baskets of game. His usual grin was cautious, restrained. He set the baskets down. "If you think the camp's going to cheer you now, you're wrong," he said, half teasing. "They'll watch for a misstep." Zara didn't flinch. "I'll take it," she said. She stepped toward the drying area, folding hides with careful hands, arranging them neatly. Every motion deliberate, efficient. A few females whispered among themselves. "She actually looks different." "She's still the same leopard at heart," someone hissed. "Don't be fooled." Zara ignored them. She rinsed another batch of roots in the stream, carrying them back to the storage hut, careful to avoid stepping on scattered sticks and debris. Her mates followed closely, assisting without comment. Mid-morning, a call went out. The hunters needed more nets for the evening hunt. Zara picked up a half-woven net abandoned near the edge of camp. She knelt to repair the broken strands, tying them tight and testing the tension. Loon handed her twine as needed, his tail flicking nervously whenever a nearby female watched too closely. Taryn leaned over. "Don't stop. Even if they stare." Zara's hands moved without pause. "I won't." By the time the hunters returned with fresh game, the nets were ready. The leaders of the hunting party exchanged glances, surprised by the neatness and strength of the repairs. Whispers followed them. "She did this. She's useful." As the sun climbed high, Zara stood back and surveyed the camp. Small eyes watched from the shadows, murmurs following her every move. Her mates flanked her now, Taryn silent but approving, Rick folding his arms and nodding once, Loon smiling faintly, tail brushing the ground in quiet satisfaction. Zara glanced at them, lips tight but steady. The weight of their eyes pressed down on her, the unspoken judgment of the clan. But she didn't move away. She held her ground, and for the first time she felt the beginnings of trust taking shape. Not freely given, not yet, but earned through sweat, care, and action. As the day stretched into evening, Zara gathered firewood and stacked it neatly near the hearth. A few onlookers shook their heads, some snorted with disbelief. But no one interrupted. The work was hers now, her redemption measured in small acts, watched closely, judged silently. And for the first time since awakening, Zara felt that change could grow, one careful, steady step at a time. The morning sun had barely brushed the tops of the huts when Zara arrived at the communal clearing. A group of young hunters were arguing over the placement of traps for the day's hunt. "Move it back," one of the lion males barked. "You'll scare the game." "I said it goes here," snapped another, smaller male, tail flicking irritably. Zara stepped forward, hands empty but steady. She had spent days observing the hunters' methods, memorizing their routines, their preferred routes. "Here," she said, pointing to a shaded section of the brush. "The tracks are clear and the snare won't alert the deer." A ripple of laughter ran through the group. One of the older lionesses shook her head. "She can't even hunt and now she's giving orders?" Zara ignored the murmurs. She crouched beside the traps, adjusting a few knots with precise fingers. The younger males exchanged glances, skeptical but curious. Rick came up behind her, arms folded. "Careful," he muttered. "If you make a mistake now, they'll never let you live it down." "I know," she said quietly. "But if it fails, I fix it." Her words carried weight in action, not tone. She demonstrated the proper tension on the snares, the placement to avoid false triggers, and the correct paths for guiding prey. The younger males watched, initially resistant, then slowly attentive. A whisper ran through the crowd, "Maybe she's learning." Suddenly one of the older females, sharp, sarcastic, stepped forward, tail lashing. "And what if this fails, Leopard? Will your mates take the blame for your errors?" Zara met her gaze, steady. "Then it's my error, not theirs." The camp went quiet. Even the wind seemed to pause, rustling the leaves softly. Loon, standing beside her, gave a subtle nod, eyes bright with quiet pride. Taryn's presence at her side radiated calm support. Rick remained behind, silent but protective. The day passed with careful observation. When the hunters returned at dusk, their traps were intact, the game caught efficiently. Some murmured approval. Others grumbled under their breath, reluctant to admit it, but none could deny the work. Zara stepped back, letting the hunters collect their spoils. Her hands were scratched, her knees dirty, but she held her posture with quiet dignity. She didn't seek praise, only to show she could be relied upon. That night, as she sat with Taryn, Rick, and Loon around the fire, the clan's whispers had shifted slightly. Not to admiration yet, but to acknowledgement. The leopard who had been reckless and cruel was slowly changing. And for the first time, Zara realized that her redemption wasn't about being loved or forgiven. It was about proving moment by moment that she could be trusted. The fire crackled. Somewhere in the shadows, a lion's roar answered, but Zara didn't look up. Her eyes were on her mates, and she allowed herself a quiet, steadying breath. She was no longer just surviving. She was beginning to belong. The sun rose pale over the camp, brushing the huts with a soft gold. Zara moved through the morning mist, carrying a basket of roots and herbs. She walked steadily, tail flicking slightly as the clan went about their routines around her. The glances she received now were different. No longer whispered doubt or scorn, but a cautious acknowledgement. Some of the younger females glanced and looked away, a small nod in her direction. The hunters who once ignored or dismissed her presence offered brief, polite greetings as they passed. Even a few elders inclined their heads when she approached the storage huts. Taryn stepped beside her, carrying a bundle of firewood. He glanced at the neatly stacked baskets, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Everything seems in order," he said quietly. Zara only nodded, lowering the basket and sorting through the roots. She carefully discarded spoiled pieces and layered the rest for storage. Loon crouched beside her, helping to steady the baskets as she worked, while Rick arrived shortly after with a set of clay pots, placing them in a neat row for water storage. The clan moved around them in organized rhythms, and the quiet acceptance was tangible. No one questioned her presence or her work. Small nods, polite gestures, brief smiles. They weren't warm yet, but the subtle shift was unmistakable. By mid-morning, Zara had organized the stored roots and herbs, layered meat in ash for preservation and checked the water supply. Taryn observed from nearby but didn't interfere. Loon offered help when needed, his eyes bright with pride, and Rick stayed close, carrying supplies and lending strength when the baskets were heavy. Some of the hunters returned with the day's catch. Zara stepped forward to inspect the meat, carefully slicing and salting it for preservation. She layered the pieces with ash and stacked them in the clay-lined pit. Her hands were precise and steady, each motion deliberate. A group of females lingered nearby, speaking softly among themselves. "She's reliable," one said. Another murmured, "Better than I expected." Zara ignored the murmurs, continuing her work. No words were necessary, her results spoke for her. By the time the hunters had stored their catch, the pit was orderly, preserved for the coming weeks. The clan no longer doubted that she could contribute meaningfully. The afternoon passed in a similar rhythm. Zara repaired nets with careful attention, reinforcing threads and testing tension. Loon handed her twine as needed, learning from her motions. Rick carried heavier racks and set up drying areas for hides, while Taryn guided the young hunters, letting them observe her techniques. The camp moved more smoothly than it had in months. Tasks that once caused friction or complaint now proceeded efficiently. Zara's silent diligence had created a ripple of calm order throughout the clearing. The elders watched quietly, impressed by her efficiency, and even the younger females started mimicking her careful approach to daily chores. As the sun lowered, Zara oversaw the firewood preparation. She stacked the bundles neatly near the hearth, checking for dry kindling and broken branches. Her mates worked with her seamlessly, a silent, coordinated effort. When the first cold winds began to stir through the valley, the clan began organizing winter stores. Zara instructed quietly, pointing out safe storage methods and optimal layering techniques to prevent spoilage. No one challenged her. Where once her presence might have been met with suspicion, now there was attentive observation and cooperation. By evening, Zara sat with Taryn, Rick, and Loon near the fire, their hands busy with the last of the day's repairs and preparations. The air was cool and clean, the scent of burning wood comforting. The crackle of the fire was the only sound for a long while, broken only by the occasional murmur of distant animals or the wind through the trees. Rick leaned back, stretching his shoulders. "The camp feels different," he said quietly. "More organized, more prepared. Your work makes a difference." Zara only nodded, pressing a hand to the fur-lined cloak Loon had draped over her shoulders. She didn't need to speak of her progress. It was visible in the orderly stacks, repaired tools, and calm rhythm of the camp. Taryn's tail brushed the ground beside her, a subtle sign of his quiet approval. Loon smiled faintly, pride bright in his eyes, while Rick's expression, though restrained, carried respect. The fire crackled and the camp settled into a gentle rhythm of evening. Whispered approval and quiet glances followed Zara from across the clearing, small acknowledgments of her work and the changes she had made. There was still distance, still careful observation, but the mood had shifted. The clan now accepted her presence not because they had to, but because her actions had earned it. Zara remained seated, tending the last embers and checking the clay pots one final time. Her hands were scraped and tired, her shoulders sore from the day's labor, but she moved with purpose and calm. The wind stirred, carrying distant roars and the faint murmur of the valley. Zara did not flinch. She had carved her place quietly, through work and care, through patience and persistence. The subtle acceptance of the clan was her reward. Not admiration, not praise, but acknowledgement. For the first time since her awakening, she allowed herself to lean back against the firelight, letting the weight of her efforts settle. Step by step, day by day, she was changing the life around her. The leopard's head was still bowed, her tail low, but she moved with quiet confidence. And the clan slowly began to see her not as the reckless daughter of a chief, but as someone who belonged. The sun had barely cleared the ridge when the first scouts returned, dust clinging to their fur, voices low and urgent. "Lionel," one of them called, panting. "The four-marked lion near the northern border. Hunting, trading perhaps. We don't know." A hush fell across the camp. Eyes flicked toward Zara, and the subtle tension in the air was palpable. For weeks, whispers had followed her. Would she act rashly? Could she resist her old impulses? The memory of her reckless pursuit of Lionel haunted the clan. In the past, her desire had led to costly appeasements, a small fortune in trade, gifts, or labor given to keep the powerful lion calm. Now, as she adjusted the strap of her basket and began moving toward the northern boundary, the clan watched, breath held. Every step was measured, deliberate. Zara did not glance toward Lionel's expected approach. She kept her head down, tail brushing lightly against the dust, hands steady. Taryn and Rick flanked her, quiet and attentive. Loon stayed close, fingers brushing hers in steady reassurance. No one spoke. They simply observed, waiting for a spark, for the flash of the old arrogance they knew too well. By mid-morning, movement appeared along the riverbank. Lionel came into view first, massive, for black marks gleaming under the sun. Behind him, scouts and hunters moved cautiously. The camp stiffened. Even Zara's mates, loyal and steady, tensed instinctively. A ripple of whispers passed among the onlookers. "She'll do something," one muttered. "Watch her. Don't let her stir trouble." Zara moved with quiet precision, stacking firewood near the river, checking the nets, arranging supplies. She did not falter, did not glance at Lionel. Every motion was calm, controlled, deliberate. Lionel's amber eyes swept the camp, then fell on her. There was interest there, yes. Curiosity and something else, a faint amusement. He approached carefully, observing the organized work and the steady leopardess at its center. The camp waited, tense. Their eyes darted from Zara to Lionel and back. They had feared her impulsive nature would provoke him, that history might repeat itself. Yet as moments passed, it became clear. She had changed. The leopardess who had once caused costly appeasements now worked quietly, steadily, without a trace of her former recklessness. A few of the younger females whispered, relief in their tones. She's different." Sia appeared then, moving gracefully along the far bank. The gazelle's halo glowed faintly in the morning sun, and her presence drew attention from the entire camp. Her males followed her naturally, alert but restrained. She paused briefly, scanning the camp. Her gaze lingered momentarily on Zara, curious, assessing, but she moved on without confrontation. Lionel lingered a little longer, circling the edge of the camp. His gaze returned to Zara, who continued her work as if he were not there. He tilted his head once, a silent acknowledgement of her change. Then, without another step toward confrontation, he turned and disappeared into the trees, leaving only the faint echo of his roar. The tension in the camp slowly ebbed. Eyes that had been fixed with worry now relaxed. No one breathed a word at first, but subtle gestures of acknowledgement passed quietly among them. A small nod from a hunter, a glance of approval from an elder, a barely perceptible smile from a young female who had once doubted her. Zara finished stacking the firewood and straightened the last clay pot. Her hands were dirty, scraped, but steady. She did not speak of the encounter. She did not invite praise. She simply moved with calm authority, letting her work show that she was in control, and that the reckless impulses of her past were gone. Taryn knelt beside her, brushing his fingers over the tied nets. "You handled that well," he said softly, voice carrying both pride and relief. Loon offered a small smile, brushing her hand as he handed her another strip of twine, and Rick's nod, though subtle, carried weight. Across the clearing, the clan exhaled collectively. Relief, surprise, and cautious admiration mingled in the quiet evening air. They had expected chaos or worse, another costly mistake. Instead, they found a leopardess who had learned restraint, patience, and quiet strength. Zara continued her work as the sun climbed higher, each careful motion reinforcing what they had begun to accept. She was no longer the reckless daughter who had once brought tension and expense to the clan. She was steady, reliable, and in control. Outside the camp, the faint echoes of Lionel's passage and Sia's movement lingered in the valley. The leopardess did not flinch. She had faced the potential for chaos and chosen the quiet path of work and care. And in doing so she had shown her clan, and the watching lion, that she was no longer the same. The first frost had dusted the valley in silver when Zara moved through the camp, her tail brushing lightly over the frost-hardened earth. Her hands were steady as she checked the stored roots and salted meat, ensuring nothing had spoiled. Around her, the clan moved with coordinated ease, Younger hunters patrolled the perimeter, older females inspected food stores, and the elders murmured quietly among themselves, no longer skeptical, only observant. Her mates flanked her naturally. Terran carried bundles of firewood, his arm brushing hers as they passed, fingers lingering for a brief, familiar contact. Rick adjusted a clay pot beside her, meeting her eyes with a faint, reassuring smile. Loon padded close, nudging her lightly, a playful touch that made her tail flick involuntarily. They were more than companions now. The subtle touches, quiet glances, and easy coordination between them spoke of trust and affection. Together they had endured the long days of preparation and the tension of potential threats, and a deep sense of care had grown between them. Zara allowed herself the smallest smile as she imagined the future. A den filled with cubs, small paws clambering over careful hands, laughter echoing across the valley. Her parents emerged from the main hut, observing her from a short distance. The pride in their eyes was unmistakable. Her father, once strict and critical, now gave a subtle nod of approval. Her mother's tail flicked in quiet happiness, and her ears tilted forward in the way Zara had always recognized as soft pride. They had watched her grow, stumble, and rise again, transforming from the reckless daughter who had once caused costly appeasements to a steady, capable presence in the clan. Their whispered approval, the slight easing of tension in their posture, was a joy Zara felt deep in her chest. A soft cheer arose from the younger hunters as the last of the winter supplies were stacked and checked. They had learned from her patience, her care, and her steady hands. Even the elder females approached, offering advice on storage methods and sharing smiles that had once been absent. Slowly, imperceptibly, the camp had begun to rely on Zara not just for her skill, but for the calm cohesion she had nurtured among them. The sun climbed higher, scattering frost and lighting the valley in gold. Zara paused to wipe her hands, her gaze sweeping over the clan. Nets repaired, food stores secured, firewood stacked, everyone busy with their tasks. The camp hummed with quiet efficiency. No longer whispers of doubt or fear, only acknowledgement of the leopardess who had changed, the daughter, the mate, the quiet force of care among them. Terran reached for her hand, fingers intertwining with hers. "You've done more than we could have hoped," he murmured. Rick leaned close, brushing his shoulder against hers. "You've kept us all safe, and taught us how to survive better than we ever did before." Loon tugged gently at her sleeve, eyes shining. "I want to see your cubs someday," he said softly, voice full of hope and warmth. Zara laughed, low and content, tail swishing. She pressed a hand to each of them in turn, holding their contact, letting the warmth of their trust and love sink in. "We will," she said quietly. "All of us, together." The sounds of the valley seemed to respond, the wind rustling through the trees, birds calling in the distance. The clan watched them, taking cues from the harmony of the small family at the center. Trust and cohesion had grown steadily, a subtle but powerful force that bound them together. Later, as the sun dipped low, the camp gathered near the fire. Zara knelt beside her parents, smiling faintly as they ruffled her hair and tail affectionately. "You've done well," her father said simply, voice filled with pride. Her mother pressed a hand to her shoulder, eyes soft. "We always knew you could. But you've chosen the right way." Her mates joined her, leaning close, their presence a quiet promise of loyalty and love. Hands brushed, tails entwined for a brief, playful moment. Loon laughed softly, Rick grinned faintly, and Terran's quiet gaze met hers with unspoken warmth. Zara surveyed the firelight, the warmth reflecting in the eyes of her clan, her family, and her mates. The frost of the season could not touch this warmth. She had rewritten her fate not by fighting, not by reckless pride, but by patient action, careful thought, and the quiet courage to change. Outside the circle of the camp, distant roars echoed across the valley, reminders that the world was still wild, still untamed. Sia and her group had passed, leaving the valley quiet, unchallenged. Lionel's presence had come and gone, curiosity satisfied, leaving no harm behind. The leopardess rose, brushing her hands together, tail flicking lightly. The future lay before her, bright, uncertain, but hers to shape. Her mates flanked her, warm and protective. Her parents watched, smiling softly. The clan bustled quietly around them, cohesive, prepared, and stronger for the leopardess who had chosen to change. Zara's ears twitched at the wind, a faint smile on her lips. Together they would endure the harsh season, the challenges of life in the valley, and perhaps one day fill the den with the sound of their cubs. The fire crackled and flared, shadows dancing on the frost-touched earth. In the heart of the camp, Zara, once reckless, arrogant, and bound by the story she had read, now stood as the quiet center of trust, love, and hope. The future awaited, and for the first time she was ready to embrace it. As the stars began to shimmer above the frost-tipped hills, she looked to the horizon with a small, content smile, a reminder that many more stories of courage, survival, and life in the beast world still awaited. If you want to follow Zara and discover the journeys of other beastmen, be sure to like and subscribe for more tales from the wild.